Good morning, dear hearts. We are on lesson 66. Please subscribe, and it is our second giant stride lesson. It also is continuing from where we started, which as the lesson begins, you've surely noticed an emphasis throughout our recent lessons on the connection between fulfilling your function and achieving happiness. Quick review. I am the light of the world. Forgiveness is my function. Wait a minute. Happiness is my function too? Yes, they're the same. As the light of the world brings peace to every mind through my forgiveness. Happiness, forgiveness, they go together. Let me not forget my function. My only function is the one God gave me, which also plays into today's lesson. And today my happiness and my function are one. Always one. One is the only number, not the lonely number. So, as I started, our first paragraph says that we've noticed a connection in our recent lessons between fulfilling our function and achieving happiness. This is because you do not really see the connection, yet there is more. There's more than just a connection. They're the same. Their forms are different, and we deal in a world of form here, so we may not notice or realize that they indeed are the same, but they are completely one. The ego does constant battle. This is a very profound lesson, and it's an easy read. I would suggest it. I don't know if I've said that recently. The ego does constant battle with the Holy Spirit on the fundamental question of what your function is. So does it do constant battle with the Holy Spirit about what your happiness is? What's your function? What's your happiness? The ego has all kinds of answers, but it's not a two-way battle because the ego attacks and the Holy Spirit does not respond. He knows, Holy Spirit knows what our function is, and He knows what our happiness is, and He knows where they are indeed intersected to both be the same. This paragraph and this whole idea of not doing battle, and in other years in doing this lesson, I have referenced the movie War Games. It's an old movie, but again, we can see things differently as we go on and on our journey, on our spiritual journey. We look back at movies and books and television shows and people and see the spirituality message where we did not see it before. And in that message, which you'd have to see it, I can't really describe it, but it's a computer trying to start war, but it realizes when it goes through every configuration that it can, and it comes up with saying only winning move is not to play. And if we would all realize that all of our attack thoughts, the only way to really release ourselves from those attack thoughts, and in order for us to be happy, is to simply not to play with sharp objects, as the Course tells us. So today we will try to go past this wholly meaningless battle and arrive at the truth about your function. We will not engage in senseless arguments about what it is not to play. We will not become hopelessly involved in defining happiness and determining the means for achieving it. We will not indulge the ego by listening to its attacks on truth. We will merely be glad that we can find out what truth is. And this lesson goes on to talk about the difference between the ego's illusions and truly what is truth. We have a longer practice period today, 10 to 15 minutes, and its purpose is our acceptance of the fact that not only is there a real connection between the function God gave you and your happiness, but that they are actually identical. As in the first paragraph, it said they are the same. They're identical. God gives you only happiness. Therefore, the function He gave you must be happiness, even if it appears to be different. And in this world of illusions, it can certainly appear that way. Today's exercises are an attempt to go beyond these differences in appearance, which is form, and recognize a common content where it exists in truth. So for our 10 to 15 minute practice time, it gives us some lines to go into, which is really a logical premise. It's called a syllogism. And there's a few throughout the course and throughout the workbook. And the first and second lines must be true for the conclusion to be true as well. God gives me only happiness. God, He has given me my function. He's given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. And it's to see the logic in this sequence, even if you do not accept the conclusion. It is only if the first two thoughts would be wrong that the conclusion could be false. So now this lesson says, well, let us look about these premises. Let's look at these two first sentences. The first premise, the first sentence, is that God gives you only happiness. This could be false, of course, but in order for it to be false, it's necessary to define God as something that He, she is not. Love cannot give evil, and what is not happiness is evil. I'm not sure I like the term evil, but let's say it is missing the mark. God cannot give what He does not have, and He cannot have what He is not. We must, as we've already learned in other lessons, that, in order to, 39 actually, in order to give something, we must indeed have it first. God cannot give us happiness if God wasn't happy. Unless God gives you, God gives you only happiness, He must be evil. And it is this definition of Him that you are believing if you do not accept the first premise that God gives me only happiness. The second premise, the second line, is that God has given you your function, and we have seen that there are only two parts of your mind. That's why this lesson has so much good stuff in it, and reviewing and bringing home and giving us more clarity. There's only two parts of our mind. One is ruled by the ego and is made up of illusions. The other is the home of the Holy Spirit, where truth abides. Truth and illusions cannot coexist. They never will. There are no other guides but these to choose from, and no other outcomes possible as a result of your choice but the fear that the ego always engenders and the love that the Holy Spirit always offers to replace it. Thus, it must be that your function is established by God through His voice, or it is made by the ego, which you have made to replace God, which is true. And unless God gave your function to you, it must be a gift of the ego. But what does the ego ever really give? Does the ego really have gifts to give, being itself an illusion and offering only illusions of gifts? And for that, there's a favorite, well, it's not quite a paragraph, but a few sentences from chapter 8 in the text that says, you must have noticed an outstanding characteristic of every end that the ego has accepted as its own. When you have achieved it, it has not satisfied you. That is why the ego is forced to shift ceaselessly, I love that word, from one goal to another, so that you will continue to hope it can yet offer you something. These are the gifts that the ego tries to give us, but none of them are real. They're always going to be an illusion. They're always going to fall through, and we will never find our happiness through anything the ego offers. So as it says, did whatever the ego offered us, did you find it? Were you happy? Did they bring you peace? We need great honesty today. Remember the outcomes fairly, and consider also whether it's ever reasonable to expect happiness from anything the ego ever proposed. And as chapter 8 told us, no, it will never offer us anything. Yet the only alternative to the ego is the only alternative to the Holy Spirit. So we will choose. Oh, again, a course in choosing. Choose the ego, choose the Holy Spirit. One will bring us happiness. One will force us to shift ceaselessly. constantly looking for the next best thing, which won't work out either. So you will listen to madness or hear the truth. Try to make this choice as you think about the premises on which our conclusion rests. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. For God himself shares it with us. Today's idea is another giant stride. There it is. In the perception of the same as the same and the different as different. On one side stands all illusions, and on the other, all truth stands on the other side. So let us today, let us try, I like that, just try today to realize that only truth is true. Then we have, hopefully to practice this twice an hour, so every 30 minutes, you can set a timer on your phone, or you can remember another way. And the lines we are given for practicing are, my happiness and function are one because God has given me both. And that's it for today. Beautiful lesson, important lesson. There's a reason it's a giant stride. And only truth is true. So if this was helpful, please let me know. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please comment, please smile. Smile at how much we are changing our thought processes and how much happier we are because of that. And smile because we're happy, and taking a deep breath and release everything else. And just pray for this function of ours to bless and help all of the sonship, all of our brothers, all of our sisters, as soon as possible. Try, maybe today. Namaste.